think, I may be wrong, but I think that in every sport, a coach will look at film for the upcoming game. And what the coach does is that he reviews the film so that he can have an understanding of how the opponent acts and reacts. My son Matt and I, he being a football player in high school, I used to video his football games. And what we used to do is we'd go home and we would watch the game. And we would have videos from the team that they would play the next week. And he was a defensive lineman, a nose guard. And so he would watch how the offensive line played. He would watch how the quarterback ran back. And he would put a game plan together in his mind. He would prepare for the, if you will, adversary, the opponent. And it saddens me and it concerns me that there are many of us as Christians that we have, if you will, a game film. It's called the Bible. In 1 Peter chapter 5, we have a game film. We have a video of the opponent that we will face, that we do face. And what troubles me, what concerns me, and in some cases saddens me, is how surprised we are as married couples. How shocked we are when we find ourselves not making the shot spiritually, not gaining the ground spiritually, striking out spiritually, and saying such things as, I don't know what to do. Or us as a Christian married couple saying things like, I don't know why we have to go through this. The film is here. The evidence is here. The answer to the problems that we face, the answer is obvious. It's easy to understand. It's the application of it, because you see, in the same way that my son would watch a film and a coach watches a film, you can understand it, you can have a game plan, but it's getting out on the field when the opposition comes. The other day, I found myself that I like to shoot some hoops every now and then. And I found myself, by myself, dribbling the ball and taking some shots, and fairly easy. But then a friend came along, and he started playing against me. It turned into a whole different ballgame. It's called opposition. And he would put up his arms like this, and he would block me, and now I have resistance. Now it's a different ballgame. You see, you have opposition. But I want us to, in some cases, pull the curtain back completely and learn for the first time, and in some cases, just be reminded that you can be ready. You can live a life, as Jesus says in John chapter 10, a blessed life as a married couple, an abundant life, a full life. And that's not to say that some of you are not. You are. But too many of us find ourselves being tackled and striking out and simply saying, I just don't know why it has to be so difficult. I just don't know why we have to have so many problems. I just don't understand why we have to argue so much. I just don't understand why my husband has to Why does my wife have to? In 1 Peter, in the Gospel of 1 Peter in chapter 5, it tells us in verse 6, in verse 5, he says, God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your cares upon him, because he cares for you. Now here's the advice. Be sober, be vigilant, be watchful. Because, and notice what he says, your adversary, it's personal, the devil, he's walking around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same suffering are experienced by every couple that's in this room. Well, that's in this translation right here. Being experienced by your brothers in the world. Did you see what he told you right here? You have an adversary. I said this in one of our other times together. The serpent, the enemy, did not show up in the garden until Adam and Eve got married. Once they tied the knot, there he was. Anything that you consider important, anything that you consider precious, anything that you consider valuable, expect it to be attacked. If you love your spouse, if you value your marriage, it should not surprise you that you go through trouble. If everything is just fine in your marriage, I had a couple one time that came to me that said, we want to get married. Okay, tell me about it. Well, we've known each other for, I forget, 3, 4, 6 months, whatever the time was, I don't remember. And I said, and so how are you guys doing? How's everything going? Oh, it's so perfect. Tell me about that. In the 4 months, in the 6 months that we've known each other, can you believe this, Pastor? We have not had one argument. Not one argument at all. I got up from my desk and I said, this meeting is over. What do you mean? We ain't going to talk until you have a bunch of arguments. Because you ain't being honest with each other right now. Because marriage is difficult. You got two sinners that at the core are self-centered, selfish, prideful, want their own way, and then you say, now move in together and live peacefully with each other. And you haven't argued, now they weren't living together. He tells you right here, you have an adversary. You personally. And this adversary is walking about looking for an opportunity. And did you notice what he's trying to do? It doesn't say he's roaming around looking to tap you on the shoulder. The word devour means to gulp down. We would say he wants to chew you up. He wants to eat you alive. Now we know theologically he was defeated at the cross, and greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. We know that. But we also know that we live in this human flesh called the body. And we know that we are going to battle with the flesh until the day comes that we die and go home to be with Jesus. So rest assured, between now and the time that you go home to be with Jesus, James chapter 4, verses 1, 2, and 3 are going to be a reality in your life. And you know what that says? Here's what James chapter 4, verses 1, 2, and 3 says. First, he asks you a question. James says to you, why is it that there are fights and quarrels amongst you? He asks you a question. Now, don't raise your hand, but have any of you in this room as a married couple either had a fight or a quarrel since you've been on your honeymoon? Now, I said don't raise your hand. Or maybe, how many of you, can we be honest? How many of you in the last week, raise your hand, in the last week you had let's call it a disagreement and be nice. Had a disagreement, yeah? How many in today had a disagreement? How many of you hate each other right now? No, don't. I ain't even sitting with my wife tonight. I don't know what. No, but listen, James asks you a question. Why is it that you have fights and quarrels amongst you? And then he answers the question. Check out how simple this is. James chapter 4, verses 1, 2, and 3 tells you why you fight. He says, isn't it because you want something and you can't have it? It's that simple. It's called selfishness. And you have an adversary that roams around looking for an opportunity to grab onto that. I don't deserve that. I don't need that. The enemy roams around like a roaring lion looking for an opportunity to fuel that, to turn the heat up on that, to remind you of how evil and wicked and bad your spouse is and how hard you have it. And if people only knew what you have to put up with day in and day out. Maybe so. But do you know that that has a spiritual root to it? The answer to your problems is obvious. There's an enemy. And I want to remind you of something. It ain't the person you're sitting next to. Seems like it, doesn't it? There's times that it seems like, God, you put this woman on this earth to ruin my life. That's why this woman breathes, just to ruin my life. There's times, I have never thought that. And I don't know where that came from. But that's not, they're not your enemy. Listen, look at this as the video projection room. You're watching the video for tomorrow. And you're watching what your opponent is going to do tomorrow. Can you get ready for it? Can you prepare for it? We're going to see how we prepare for it. But and how many times, and we don't have time, I'm going to run quickly through 6 or 7 different characteristics of how he messes with you. But I'm telling you, the answer is obvious. It's not your wife's attitude. It's not your husband's attitude. It's fueled because of selfishness, because we listen to the voice of the adversary that says, look at how they're acting. Listen to how they're talking to you. You deserve better than that. There's an adversary that's out to gulp you down. Who's writing this? Who's the author of this book? Peter. He's the one that denied the Lord 3 times. Do you think he knows about the enemy? He's got credentials. He has authority. We're going to see how Jesus came to Simon and says, hey, Satan and I had a conversation about you. Peter knows the reality. And so let's take for the, I don't want to use up all our time, but let's look at different ingredients, different ways, the game plan. How is he going to attack you tomorrow, the next day, the next week? Well, one of the ways that he's going to attack you, the Bible says in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, that he is an accuser. You ever heard those accusations from the enemy? Words like, you failed. You feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. You feel condemned. Rest assured that anytime you hear words of condemnation, you are a failure as a Christian. You're a failure as a wife. And have you as a wife, have you ever looked across a room in church, whatever, and you look at that one particular woman and you go, I hate her. She's just so right. She just seems to just be such a godly woman. I'll never be that good. I'll never be that right. If you've ever said that, where do you think that that's God up in heaven sitting on his throne telling you that? If you as a husband, if you ever look around and you look at some other man and you go, look at that guy, man, look at his Bible. His Bible, man, he must read it all the time. I mean, he must know it from the front to the back, because look at it. I mean, it's like all tattered and it's got like torn pages and stuff. And my Bible is not like that. And so you're making an assumption that because a guy's carrying a Bible that's torn and tattered, that he must have a real spiritual walk with God. He might have dropped it in the water for all you know. And so because you're not like that person, because you don't know all the verses that person does, because you've never prayed out loud in front of anybody. And if anybody ever asks you to pray out loud, I remember the first time, babe, do you remember the first time that we became Christians and we went over somebody's house for a Bible study, home Bible study? I was all freaked out. I was about as ignorant as you can be. I didn't know the Bible from upside down or right side up. And here I am at somebody's house at a Bible study. I used to go to people's houses like to steal stuff. And now I'm at somebody's house at a Bible study. And after the Bible study, now let's all get in a circle and let's all pray. Oh, Dios mío, I thought, what in the world? And so we all get in this big circle, and I remember now holding hands. Are you kidding me? With a guy? I'm holding a guy's hand. And the guy was sweating. His hand is sweating in my hand. I never hold a guy's hand, and much less a sweaty guy hand. And now they start praying. And have you ever been in a prayer where somebody, and they're praying like heavy duty, like prayers, like this one guy, he's quoting like the whole book of Deuteronomy while he's praying. And with each person that's finished and they're getting closer to me, I'm like hyperventilating more and more. And I just thought, oh man, I'm not like that. I'm not that good. I'm not that holy. I'm not that righteous. We didn't go back. We didn't go back. Can I just throw as a little side note, be careful when you're in a group of people, because you don't know if they're a new believer. And to like, no, go ahead and pray. Come on, pray. Go ahead and pray. I'd rather, no, come on, go ahead and pray. No, I did that to somebody one time. Do you remember I was doing a Bible study? By this time now I was teaching a Bible study at somebody's house, and we're going, okay, you read this verse, and you read this verse, and you read that. And I gave like 5 different verses of this person to read, that person to read. So read this, so this person stands up and reads, and this person stands up and reads, and this person, okay, stand up and read your verse. No, that's okay. No, come on, we're not going to keep, and I'm just pushing it. No, we're not going to move on until you stand up and read the Bible. Come on. And everybody's going, come on, read your verse. The guy stands up and he goes, I can't read, okay? Be careful with that. So we hear the accusations. You have an enemy. His game plan. The video. Watch the video for tomorrow's game. I'm calling it a game. I'm saying tomorrow. And the video says he's going to accuse you tomorrow. Be ready. Secondly, not only is there accusation, but he's also an aggravator. He's out to aggravate you. Have you ever just woke up in the morning with an attitude? Husbands, has your wife ever gotten up in the morning and you look at her and you go, what is wrong with you? And she just got this, don't even talk to me right now. And you go, what did I do? And she looks at you and says, you're breathing. That's bothering me. Luke chapter 22, the verse that I kind of sort of told you about, Jesus came to Simon Peter and he said, Simon, Simon. I've always said that whenever God calls your name twice, you better listen. Simon, Simon. Jesus says to him, and this is so cool, man, because it's kind of like the same as in the book of Job, where Satan asked permission. But Jesus says to Simon, Satan has come to me. And we had a conversation. And put yourself in Peter's sandals for a second. And Jesus says, Satan and I, we had a conversation. Did you now? About what? About you. And Jesus doesn't say me and one of the demons. Me and Satan. Satan came to me. And he had a question about you, Peter. What was the question? He asked me permission. See, I like that. Satan asked me permission to sift you like wheat, Peter. How'd you like to be Simon Peter and hear that? You and Satan had a conversation about me. And he's asking you if he can sift me like wheat? Yes. Now, if I'm Simon Peter, you know what I'm going to say? You told him no, right? You said, stay away from him. He's mine. Jesus says this. He says, Satan has asked me permission to sift you like wheat, Peter. So I'm going to pray for you. That's what he told him. He didn't say no. Because in John chapter 16, verse 33, Jesus said, in this world, you're going to have tribulations. But cheer up, because I've overcome the world. Game plan for tomorrow, aggravation. Expect it. You, husband, you're going to go to your sock drawer, and you're not going to find any matches. None of the socks are going to match. They're all just one sock. Where I've never in my life have figured out, where does the other sock go? Where does it go? God help me. I take off 2 socks. I tie them together. I put them in the dirty clothes. I don't throw my socks on the floor. I put them, I wash clothes, don't I? I put them in the dirty clothes thing. When they come back, one is gone. Where did it go? Are we the only ones that have the dryer from hell? That the dryer eats the sock? Teresa, come on, explain it to me. Tell me, what did you do? You must have a pile of my socks somewhere. That's an aggravation. Tomorrow, you got little ones at home, little children, 2-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 16-year-old. Oh. You got to get it. You got to have them at school at 8 o'clock. It's going to take an act of God to get your kids from the bedroom to the dining room so that they can eat their Wheaties. And you're going to sit and you're going to do devotions. They don't want to. They're still sleeping at the table with the Cheerios hanging out of their mouth. But we're going to do devotions. Wake up. We're doing devotions. We love God here at this house, and we're doing devotions. Aggravated. Expect it. And then, after you fought that whole thing of devotions, you're going to go outside, and you're going to have a flat tire. And you're late. Kids are late for school. You're late for work. I'm not saying that all of that is demonic. I'm not. Maybe you got a bad tire. I don't know. But do you ever consider the possibility, God, are you trying to show me something? Not only an aggravator, but he's an instigator. In the book of 1 Chronicles chapter 21, King David, out of nowhere, he says, I think that I'll number the troops to see how many troops I have in the army. And it says in 1 Chronicles chapter 21 that the enemy enticed him. And he even had a commander, Joab, that said to him, oh, this ain't a good idea, David. Nope, I want you to do it. Where did that come from? There's a time that he will just instigate you. Provoke you is another word. Stir you, stimulate and seduce you. He will also not only aggravate, hinder, you have or instigate, but you have an enemy that will hinder you. Seek to slow you down. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 18, the Apostle Paul says, I wanted to come to you time and again, but Satan stopped or hindered me. That's the game, Phil. There's hindrances. They're not obstacles that stop you. They're not walls that prevent you. They hinder you. You feel constrained. You feel limited. You feel like I'm boxed in. I don't feel free. I feel like the walls are closing in. Again, I'm not saying, please don't misunderstand. Don't look for a demon under every single rock. That's not good. But to not recognize that there is a devil and that he is out to accuse you, aggravate you, instigate you, and hinder you is a bad mistake. Because then you take it out on each other. Instead of crying out to God, you end up yelling at each other when you don't recognize it. Also, he's a distractor. He's going to distract you tomorrow. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, the Apostle Paul says, I am afraid that just as Eve was deceived by the serpent's cunning, I'm afraid that your minds may somehow be led astray, watch now, from your sincere and pure devotion to Christ. Just as Eve was deceived, just as she was seduced. Being led astray from your sincere and pure, or being led astray from your single-minded devotion to Jesus. 50, 60, 70 hours of work. Television, a lot of television, a lot of computer time. Now, please, I hope I don't offend you. A lot of Facebook time. Can I just, Lord, do I've ended up staying away from Facebook because I've been troubled in my heart. I've been troubled in my heart at some of the pictures I see. You're a Christian woman. It ought to reflect in how you dress. It ought to reflect on how you stand. You're a Christian wife. You're a Christian man. What you post ought to reflect that you have a heart for Jesus. Distractions. A lot of time at the gym. Really into the gym. The enemy will play that game with you. This is the game film to prepare you for tomorrow. There's going to be distractions. Somebody will catch your eye that shouldn't catch your eye, and you might be distracted. Not only distractions, but in John chapter 4 and John chapter 8, in verse 44, Jesus himself says he's a liar. You have an enemy that Jesus said that he is a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth. There is no truth in him. And watch this now. When he lies, that word means pseudo. When he lies, he speaks his native language. He's a liar, and he's a father of lies. So when you spend your time thinking, what do you think about? Do you think about the truth? Write this verse down, Philippians chapter 4. I believe it's like verse 7, verse 8, somewhere in that vicinity. Where the Apostle Paul says to you the things that you're supposed to think about. Think about the things that are noble. You're supposed to think about the things that are praiseworthy. You're supposed to think about the things that are excellent. But, check this out. Does anybody know the first word that he uses that you're supposed to think about? Think about the things that are true. That's the first word that he uses. And then he uses all the others. Because I don't know about you, but I find myself thinking more and making more and imagining more and what ifing myself more than I do thinking about the truth. And so the game plan that the enemy has for you is to seek to fill your mind with lies. Fill your mind with, your husband don't love you anymore. He don't care about you. He thinks you've gained too much weight. He's looking at other women now. He's going to fill your mind as a man. She don't care about you. When was the last time she initiated sex with you? If she really loved you. She knows your needs, and she don't care. She don't care about you. She's got time for her friends. She's always happy around her friends. She ain't got time for you. And you hear those things, and I don't know. Could it be that some of it is true? I don't know. But I do know this. You have an adversary. Your adversary is seeking somebody to devour, and one of the ways that he will gulp you down is by filling your mind with lies about your spouse to bring division. So that by the time that your wife comes home, and if you've been thinking lies the whole time, she comes home with a good attitude, a happy attitude, but because you've been thinking lies about her and you've been listening to the voice of the enemy, you got an attitude with her when she came home happy. And you come up with things like, you ain't never this, and you don't do this, and she's looking at you going, what? Where in the world is this coming from? Now, of course, we know it goes both ways. But the game plan, you have an adversary that is going to lie to you. You have an adversary, number 5, that masquerades. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, it says that he masquerades, disguises himself as an angel of light. There will be tomorrow, the next day, the week after, the month after, situations that to you, I think I'm going to take this way out. I think this looks better for me. Is that something that God is leading you, or is the enemy chasing you? Well, I don't know. I don't think that God doesn't expect me to suffer all my life. God doesn't expect me to be miserable forever. God wants me to be happy. So this person over here, here's what I hear. My husband just don't get me. My husband just doesn't understand me. My husband won't listen to me. But there's this guy at work that he's not sexual. He just listens to me. He just seems to care. He's interested. Guys know how to play that game. Guys know. He's playing you. He's playing you. And you have an enemy that's out to devour. And he's going to he has a way in the book of Isaiah, chapter 5, he has a way, the enemy has a way of taking what is bad, and he has a way of making it look good. And he has a way of taking what is good and making it look bad. But in the book of Hebrews in chapter 5, it says that through the constant use of the word of God, you're able to distinguish between good and evil. So when the enemy says, the man to whom you're married, the woman to whom you're married, that ain't no good, man. This other person, they get you, they understand you. In your mind, you go, wait a minute. Because I've been constantly in the Word, I can distinguish, that's evil. It looks good. That guy, he's talking good trash. He's making me feel good. But even though it's good, it makes me feel good, it's evil. It's not from God. The answer is not complicated. There is an enemy that is watching your game film right now. But you are able to watch his game film. And you're able to see what his plans are for you. And he plans to masquerade. And lastly, John chapter 10, verse 10, Jesus said that Satan, the thief, came to kill, to steal, and to destroy. But I've come that you might have life and have it to the full. That's the ultimate goal. Get you so divided that you end up destroyed. Statistic. That's the plan. Go with me to Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to finish there because I want to look at what are our weapons of victory. Briefly, just 4 things, and then we're going to continue with the rest of our time. So we have an adversary. We have an opponent. And he has a plan. But you can have a plan. This is the defense that you can mount against that offense right here. Or the other way around, if you like. Jesus gives you the recipe for the weapons of your victory. In Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 3, notice that he says, blessed. Of course, you know this is the Beatitudes. Blessed, or happy, content, satisfied, a weapon of victory, poor in spirit, because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. A weapon of victory is to be poor in spirit. This word poor in the original language means a complete beggar. But notice, Jesus ain't talking money because he says in spirit. So a weapon that will defeat this enemy that is out to do everything and much more than what I just mentioned is to find yourself totally dependent on somebody else. That's a poor person. A person that is literally poor needs the help of somebody else, is dependent on somebody else. They can't provide for themselves. Jesus says, take that attitude now into the spiritual nature and be dependent on me. Happy is the person that is dependent on God. That's a weapon of victory. God, I can't do this. You said in your word in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 that when I'm weak, you're strong. So I'm dependent on you. I can do all things through Christ when I'm poor in spirit. So there's a dependency on God. That's a weapon of victory. Recognizing I'm weak in this area. I'm weak in that area. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't go there. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't think that. I shouldn't feel that. And so, God, I'm dependent on you. Secondly, a second weapon of victory. Verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Notice now, the person that is meek is given something. Isn't that an inheritance? You don't earn an inheritance for the most part. It's a gift. It's given to you. So you will inherit the earth when you're meek. But don't misunderstand this, please. This is not a sign of weakness. Meekness is power under control. A weapon that is going to bring you victory is humility. That's what meekness is. Meekness is this. I as a dad, when our kids were little, I as a dad, you as a parent, you lay on the ground, and your kids lay on top of you. And what do you pretend? You pinned me. You win. Really? No, that's power under control. You're giving in. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 18, 19, and 20, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. What is the opposite? If you turn verse 5 around, what is the opposite? Blessed are the meek, because they will receive something. What if you turn that around? Unhappy are the prideful, because they get nothing from God. That's the opposite. A weapon for victory against the attack and the wiles of the enemy is humility before God. Because it's connected to verse 3, you are dependent on God. Verse 7, another weapon for your victory. This is so cool. This is so necessary. Blessed are the merciful, because they will obtain mercy. Watch this now. Mercy full of mercy. Another way to put it, blessed are those that are quick to forgive. Let me ask you a question. Look over at your spouse there. Look over at your husband, your wife there. Look over at him, say, she's a beautiful woman, right? He's a good-looking guy. But let me ask you this. Are they perfect? Be honest now. Are they perfect? Here's what happens. They make a mistake, don't they? Has your wife ever made a mistake? Has your husband ever made a mistake? Listen to this. A weapon that is going to bring victory over the attacks of the enemy is to be quick to forgive. Why is that necessary? Because that's the way your God is with you. And aren't you glad? I am so glad that when I sin and I confess my sin, that God is faithful and just to forgive me for my sins and to cleanse me from all unrighteousness. I am so glad that 1 Corinthians chapter 13 says that God does not keep a record of my mistakes. I am so glad of that. But don't you wrong me, because I will remember it till the day I die. How dare I do that? How dare I keep a record of the wrongs you've made against me when God doesn't keep them of me? A weapon of victory, quick to forgive. Because that's the way your God is with you. Lastly, verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, because they shall be called sons of God. The Son of God, the ultimate peacemaker. And with whom did Jesus come to make peace? With those that rejected him, with those that didn't deserve it, with those that crucified him. And he says, now, you want to be blessed? You want to have a victory over this enemy? No, and please notice now, you got to see this word. Blessed are the peacemakers. Because here's what I want. I want my wife to come to me and make peace with me. Because I want to win. And if she comes to me and asks me to forgive her, I was right. I win. Do you know what that is? Anathema of pride. And that is the opposite, complete opposite, completely opposed to the life and the heart and the intent of Jesus. Seek after peace. Pursue peace. As long as it is possible with you, make every effort to be at peace. Why? Because that is one of the weapons that brings victory in our life. So I leave you with this before we finish out our night. There are some of us, not all, but there are some of us that in our marriages, we either have been, we are, or we will be heavy laden, burdened, troubled, challenged, tension. And we look at each other, and some of us, maybe even in this room, I've gotten some emails from some of you guys. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep going. And here's what I want you to remember. Every problem has an answer. Every difficulty has a solution. The question that everybody asks that is a wrong question is this: can this ever be fixed? That's a wrong question to ask. The right question that I want to ask you when you're having difficulties in your marriage is this: are you, as the husband, willing to do anything and everything within biblical parameters to see some changes begin to happen in this marriage? Are you, as a wife, willing to do anything and everything within biblical parameters to start seeing some changes in this relationship? Well, I don't know if I can do that. See, that's the question. Because this can be fixed. If the two of you got this marriage into this mess, the two of you can get this marriage out of this mess. Because you want to fix it, your husband wants to fix it, God wants it to be fixed, but it's not fixed. Why? Because one of you or both of you are not willing to do whatever it takes. Christian marriages don't fail. They don't. Oh, wait a minute, preacher. Wait, hold on. Christians get divorced. Yeah, but the marriage didn't fail. Guess who failed? The people. God created marriage. Something that God creates can't fail. Somebody failed. Somebody said, I ain't doing that. I'm tired of that. I refuse to do that again. I'll never do that again. Unless they do it, unless they... So sometimes, and I'm almost done, but sometimes it does get heavy. Check this out. There was a time that you had a suitcase. And there was a time that you used to have to carry your suitcase. 50, 60 pounds. And you had to carry that thing. It was heavy. And you carried your baggage around with you. And you're trying to get to the airport, and this is heavy, and you got the other one in the other hand, and you're all worn down. You're heavy laden, carrying your luggage. But then, and I don't know why it couldn't have been me, came up with an idea. And what's the idea? Somebody came up with the idea that says, I ain't carrying this thing anymore. They put wheels on it. And now I can take this 50 pounds and look, check this out. No problem. You can even do it behind my back. Look at that. Look at that. 50 pounds. I used to like, this is heavy. I can't do this anymore. It's too difficult. No. Not the wheels. You know what those wheels are? Jesus said, come to me, all of you that are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you some wheels for your marriage. But he says, come to me. He didn't say, I'm going to jump into your marriage and I'm going to make it right. Mm-mm. You come to me and you cast your cares upon me and I'll give you some wheels. It takes humility, it takes patience, and it takes commitment.